Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Enneagram 4 and a little bit of the 5 as well. Because I am a 4 wing 5 in that system. And there's just a lot of things I've been thinking about, just the type in general and how it functions in the world. And I've been realizing more and more with time that I am that type and I can't really be any other type. I can start to take in other positive aspects of other types, but I'm essentially functioning as a 4. So what I realize about the 4 in general is that it is the type that is sitting on, or sitting as, a heavy amount of unexpressed energy. The unexpressed self. It's trying to be expressed all the time, but there's just so much that's inside that feels like it can't be brought to light, can't be brought into the limelight. It's a hard thing to do. I think for myself, I'm just starting to get there, but it's really tough because you need some way to express what's inside, besides just words, because there's such a deep level of feeling there. And for myself, I get, I have sounds and feelings tied together, and visuals tied together, and this whole internal mindscape that is me. I'm starting to become aware of kind of a fictional landscape that's developing in me that represents everything that I've been through in my life, everything that I care about, everything that I've seen, all the energies that I've come to understand through my own feeling. So it's a pretty crazy thing. The interesting thing is, to me, as being a 4, this is also, relevant to INFPs. I think all this stuff is the same thing. So if you're an INFP, I would be listening to this for the same reasons. It's about the same information. As a 4 or an INFP, there's tons of stuff that's not expressed yet, and there's a strong desire to get it out there in the world. And a lot of it is the stuff that's dark and not understood yet, by the public. Most of people's fears, they just don't understand things like what evil is. That's a big one. That's the biggest one. What's the scariest thing? What's scarier than evil, right? So 4s kind of understand what evil really is, because they sit in that feeling that, that's the introverted feeling. It's like what I really feel inside, core deep down, what's going on in me. And that is an all-inclusive thing. It doesn't separate out what's good feeling, what's bad feeling. It is feeling. And 4s are trying to find identity, or find what this self here is all about, and what it's trying to produce or bring into the world. So that's the big quest and responsibility of a 4 in general is to kind of give birth to itself in the world through its craft or through whatever the way it expresses itself. So anyway, they understand stuff like evil because it's basically just, it's kind of like, you know, the id, or it's like what happens in nature. It's like you're very in touch with those instincts of what you want now, and you're always sitting on what you want now, because to really be in touch with the introverted feeling, you have to be immediate, and you have to be constantly reinforcing what that feeling is, just to stay alive and in touch with yourself. It's like you have a certain there's a certain frequency to who you are as an individual, and it can get drowned out by the surrounding energies in life, which is a problem, and you lose yourself. So there's this constant struggle to create this self. One of my favorite characters that represents the 4 is, you know, the characters that Adam Driver has played. You know, he's played in Girls as that one guy, is very primal guy, and of course he's Kylo Ren in Star Wars Force Awakens. And the thing is, he's of light, but he's trying to get into the dark, because the dark is where his passions are, and his self. That's where his power is. And so that's basically the quest of all 4s, is to get in there. So let's say that there are evil 4s, you know, the people, or there are people who are evil in general, and who are overtaken by that internal feeling. This is a level of consciousness, let's say, that's just drowned in distorted thinking. I'm not able to clearly see through the fact that there are no enemies. You know, there's no one to kill because you hate them or something, but also at the same time, it's a very animalistic level of consciousness in terms of like survival. You know, animals go through this all the time. So they see the prey and they attack it. They go for it. So that's just a natural thing anyway. So that's why 4s don't see evil necessarily at all. It's just an unexpressed energy that's being held back, that desires or needs to get its object of to survive, or to express itself, or to live. And that's just like how it goes. You know, I'm actually a 4 self-preservation, so I feel like this is the very core aspect of who I am, and it goes deep inside me, you know, like, it's just, I feel like if I've lived like several lives, it's probably the way I've gone about things is just kind of like go get what I need, you know, and don't let anything stop me. You know, this is just how it goes. And I feel it really strongly. But I've been kind of tampered over time by other things. So like, I would say in terms of the the Enneagram, I've kind of embraced the 1. I've actually felt that, when I was a kid, I was feeling this kind of guilt, very heavy guilt, and I didn't know why. I don't think my parents were really, didn't really like making me feel shameful necessarily. They taught me about hell, but the way that I felt guilty and like wrong was so intense that I couldn't explain what it was. But I felt that I was bad and that I was striving to be as good as I could be. So I could feel this, Enneagram type 1 playing on top of me when I was a kid. And I could feel as if I was a monk, of some sort. Like I just had fantasies and dreams of everybody being monks and everybody being at peace and everything being good, which is a very big 1 kind of fantasy. And I still kind of see things in a fantastical, like, holy way, where everything is, like, where heaven is here, but the way I'm living, the way I think what's core to me is not that way. I'm not supposed to be. I'm not 1 naturally. I'm naturally trying to express myself and be this presence, just this, like, I am here, I am alive, I feel, I taste, I breathe, I live. It's the very tangible part. Like, how do you bite into, like, how do you get to the throat of reality, and how do you bite into existence? How do you really taste it? How do you, how do I get past this mental layer or all the distractions to just get to what's core to me? How do I know I am alive? This is the most animal kind of energy that you could think about. I think that's kind of the core of what I'm all about. It's really interesting. So that's everything that I've expressed in my creativity, is kind of getting into that, trying to get into the feeling of what I feel I am. So the other thing I've been doing more recently, because I realized that I was doing type 1 when I was a kid, to kind of tamper this drive I had. But then I had a manic episode, and I could see and I could feel that the animalistic drive coming forward. It was my natural self. I felt finally free. Like the type 1 was just holding it down and trying to control it, but then it was really splitting me off from, like, another side of myself, which was just this power-driven animal energy, So I was kind of just stuck between those 2 modes. And then I started reflecting on that, because I ended up getting paranoid and really freaked out, and something arose in me, which was, I think I was always intellectual on some level, so this is already there, but I realized that my mind, the way it was and the way I was perceiving the world, was not the way it actually was. So there was this heavy mental layer that I was laying over what I was experiencing, and it was coloring it a certain way that made me paranoid. And I was seeing that people were famous people, but they weren't. I just thought that they were, and I thought my family members were other people in the hospital. And when I was hospitalized during my mania. This is the kind of stuff that happened. One of the guys at the hospital. This was when I was 14, by the way. One of the guys at the hospital was chasing me with a needle because they needed to put me down to sleep because I was acting really crazy, but it just scared the fuck out of me. So I ended up kind of attacking him because I was paranoid. It was scary. I was punching his head. He had pinned me down, or I pinned him down. I don't remember. But all the people on the floor had to come and get me and strap me down and inject the stuff into my butt, basically on my cheek. So, oh my God, it was just a terrifying thing for a 14-year-old to experience. But it was just that animalistic drive turned into paranoia. But I meant well, I still had my one line in play. I was before I was hospitalized, I was going downtown and giving out quarters to homeless people and kind of giving them the choice to figure out what they can do with it, see if they'll be responsible. Or I just had that kind of mindset of a giving kind of thing. So that could be also the 2 line in play a little bit. But so yeah, once I got out of the hospital, I started reflecting on things, and I wanted to know what the truth was, what reality was. And I realized that I had to kind of transcend the mental layers that I had somehow. And it became a quest for me for the next 8 years. So it took 8 years to get to that, where I broke through. But in the process, I started discovering the bliss of meditation. And it was just an amazing thing for me to find. I was just before that, I was just living in what felt like darkness. But then I woke up to bliss, even though there was still the distortion of my mind. So yeah, once I I had some more manias, which I'm going to describe in other videos, which are just as crazy. I have had 4, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. I've had 4 other ones since then. So 2014 was the second one, and 2006 was the first one. So there's this, this is crazy journey I've been on, but it's all trying to express the 4. But what I found, and what really healed the 4 for me, to get past the feelings of I always felt like I was from 2006 to 2014, I felt like I was a piece of shit. I mean, my whole life until 2014, I felt like I was a piece of shit. That I was unlovable. Stuff like that. So it was hard to work through. It's all the darkness, kind of all those feelings that you feel as a 4 and that you can't get away from because they are part of your identity, and you're looking for to find your identity, to find out what's true for you. You just swim in that, you know? So I think for other people, they probably would shove it down, but for me, it was like in my mind all the time. So it was hard. But yeah, so the way I cleared my mental problems and distortions was to see that there's ultimately nothing that we can know. That everything is ultimately unknowable. And if you enter this I don't know mind, then you can start seeing past these thought forms that appear. Like a thought will appear, and if you just let it be as it is and kind of go say, I don't know what that is, all of a sudden all the details of like thinking about another person versus yourself, or a situation that that's really bugging you, all these emotional things that really bug you, it starts just dissolving, and then you get to see kind of this background reality behind all the thoughts. And so I kind of just transcended the whole thought struggle in that way. And that's what the 5 was able to provide for me. And now I'm a much healthier 4 than I've ever been, since then. The thing that's happening for me now is realizing that this path to 1 is still in place. It's like it's always going to be something that the 4 seeks out, is trying to manifest this perfection, this heaven somehow. And really, the 4s are the type that have started in hell. So I'm basically starting with whatever hells I pick up, and how I feel it is, it's whatever energies that are present in me, and it's also, I seem to pick up the energies in others and in my environment in general that are like, it's like all the smog that's around, all the stuff all the bad energy, all, just like, maybe it's not right to say bad, but it's like all the stuff that is being ignored or pushed down or whatever, it gets in my system, and then it's fuel for me for some reason. It's like, I love that kind of stuff. I'm built for melancholy, for distortion, that heaviness, for some reason that's home. So really, it is kind of like being in hell is home, and it's fun because you get to make like cool stuff out of it. You get to make music and art, and your self-expression comes through, like the way that you talk, or you feel, just your overall, your sense of being is just made up of this energy. But I've had to learn how to do some techniques to kind of relieve that energy so it doesn't get too intense, because I've been thrown into the hospital several times out of me ramping up basically into my animalistic drive again with all that energy. So I'm kind of finding a way to relieve it, but still the quest is, in terms of the spirituality, I've always realized, actually through time I've realized, that you have to sink in to this current reality, like this moment, whatever's true, there's some kind of sinking feeling, like gravity pulls you down, you know, into a groundedness. And that's the only way that you are able to even start making progress towards anything. Because everything else is running away from here and it is a grasping. So what I realized actually is that movement through the world happens on its own through some kind of exterior pull, and I experienced that as what line 1 is, you know, all about. It's like there's some perfection or that's ahead of me, and I feel like I have a need to manifest that, or something is calling me to manifest it, and I can't do anything about it. Either I'm going to resist it and it's going to destroy my life at some point because I'm not listening to the call, or I listen to it and just let my body be taken forward. So it's an interesting thing, and like I get energy just in that process of being pulled along, but all my responsibility really is to just sink down. And I just saw a video of Richard Rohr talking about his new book called Falling Upward, and it's about that kind of, you know, falling down to rise up kind of thing. That's the only way to do it. You can't reach out for it and try to go up. It doesn't happen. You have to sink down, and you have to keep on sinking down forever. It's like an endless black hole or an endless well or something. Even though it sounds scary, if people are really familiar with it, that's really the power of it, you know, the power of that's the spiritual journey from there. Let's see what else I wanted to say about the 4. So the 4 in general can have a whole huge world inside that wants to be expressed. So, you know, some people that are 4s are like J.R.R. Tolkien was a 4, or an INFP, same thing. George R. Martin, the Game of Thrones guy. And I would say, just so everybody knows, from my perspective, the most 4-like character in Game of Thrones is the White Walkers, because that's the part that's the least fulfilled. You know, it's like, it's like those, all the dead become the undead. It's kind of saying that, like, our lives are not done yet, and we are, you know, what everybody fears, and we're never going to get the limelight, and you guys are living up, you know, in the warm place, and we're just out in the cold and rejected. Is kind of how it is. Like, I mean, they're not talking about, you know, that their feelings, like that they're rejected, but that's kind of what the 4 comes from, is like that feeling of the 4s are the bad guy. The 4s are the ultimate bad guy. They're the underdog. They're they're always what has not been fulfilled yet. You know, everybody else has got, everything else is in view, you know. Like, everybody else is living actually in the world, and all you see from a 4 is just a picture, but you don't really get the full taste of the 4. The 4's world is so deep. So it's pretty crazy stuff. I would say that the 5s are kind of similar to the 4s in that sense. They have an internal world, and then this the 5 aligns with INTP and myers-briggs. They have an internal world of knowledge they've built in, and they're trying to always reinforce that kind of knowledge and keep their brains going with that knowledge. So they've got a floating around idea, basically. And the 4s of the INFPs have a floating around feeling. So these guys, the 4s and the 5s, are really interesting. My brother is actually a 5 wing 4, and I'm a 4 wing 5. And so we've had conversations about this stuff a lot, because we were seeing things from kind of the two sides of the coin. We're both introverted, but we have both very in touch with our creative selves. We both very intellectual. But I'm led by my feeling. I just do things by what I feel, what's right. I have a list of my favorite movies and video games or whatever that I talk about, or bands. And he doesn't care about that so much. He just has a lot of things that he's really fascinated by intellectually. And so that's the big difference. But we intellectualize things together all the time, and we do have similar feelings on things. We share a lot of common interests, so it's really interesting. But there's a very interesting space in between the 4 and the 5, which is this. It is what's internal, because you've got this center from the 5 being as the huge, it's the internal aspect of the mental process, and then you've got the internal aspect of the emotional, or the heart process. I would just say emotional. And so those you can't see, but they're going on, but they want to manifest. They absolutely want to manifest. And oh my God, there's something about, there's a fascination that 4s and 5s have that people don't understand, but it's just they want horrors to be created. They are obsessed with horrors, and they kind of wish, they just have this wish that a horror would break out, some kind of monster would come out of the sea, like a Godzilla or whatever, or that the world just starts crumbling and then everybody goes into chaos. For some reason, the 4s and 5s just love that, especially when you're right in the middle of those two things. It's just this interesting spot, because it's exactly that feeling of what's unfulfilled. It's like you're holding in the feeling of what Godzilla feels. I'm pretty sure that the band Gojira, which is, they're really big on the whales. They're really big on how the whale feels, and that's kind of, the music is really representing the struggles of the whales against, how humans are treating them, and the dolphins and shit too, or whatever. But nature too is a big thing, so somehow there's a connection to nature, especially with the 4s. That they want nature to prevail and kind of just overgrow society, and and have it just fall into shit. Like, post-apocalyptic is an amazing thing for 4s and 5s. They love that shit. But the difference between 4s and 5s is the 4s seem to like fantasy more. I think it's because it's more traditional, and it kind of goes back to an old feeling, and I guess the feeling part is relating to that fantasy aspect. So, religion will be bigger for 4s than 5s. Or that kind of stuff, fantasy in general. And 5s are going to be bigger on science and maybe science fiction. And because they can see, they can hold on to knowledge a lot easier than 4s can. So they like seeing the possibilities of what things can be created that haven't been created before. They love new shit, like anything. Anything new that you can possibly emerge out of what currently exists. That's what the 5s are obsessed with. So they would be using technology to create a monster, basically. And it's an interesting split like that. The 5s like technology. The 4s like nature. There was another thing I was going to say, but I lost my train of thought. How I kind of see it is that the 4s are kind of like the holders of the past. They hold on to everything that's from the past that's unfulfilled. So that's why I was saying that the White Walkers are the 4s. And the 5s are the holders of the future. So they've got in their mind things that can happen in the future, and they can see the future. So that's the pull and tug of the 4s and 5s is kind of like suspended between past and future. And really what needs to happen is these guys need to be communicating, but then somehow this needs to manifest itself. So there needs to be enough courage to introduce these things into society somehow. But that's the hardest thing. So the 4s and 5s have the best of the past, like all the missed stuff from the past that hasn't been seen or really heard or really acknowledged, and then all the gems, all the keys to the future. That's insane. But these people are not really paid attention to too much. I mean, there's a lot of things going on around them, and the thing is, they don't have they don't have a good place in society. Usually it takes a lot of work, or it's hard to get into the right spot. They end up just doing whatever everybody else says they need to do, and it's hard to get their visions manifested. So it's actually really hard to get 4s and 5s into life in general, because they see so much, but they have a hard time breaking past the barriers of the way people respond to what they have, because it's usually so shocking and intense. So if they're not in a healthy space, they're gonna just feel very bad about themselves. Like they won't have enough confidence, which is a shame. What I would say as advice for 4s and 5s is, to have your networks. Build the networks of the people that you can express things with. And I really feel like it's important to align yourself with work that you care about, because it's not worth it to be working all these hours to just get paid money if you don't actually get to make what you want, to introduce the things into the world that you are seeing that you need to introduce, that you want to introduce. It's better to have, I'd say, freelance work or something like that, and work somewhere where you have a work circumstance where you can give yourself time to work on projects, and practice introducing yourself to the world somehow. How I felt as a 4w5, I've had certain moments where I felt like I was, in a weird time. Like, I don't feel like I'm from this time, but I don't know if I'm from the future or the past. It's like a weird thing. It's like I can kind of see both sides. I can see where it leads or where it came from. And we're just kind of stuck. Like, I've felt before like I was kind of vibrating through this plane of existence and kind of transcending it on some level. I've had meditations that felt like that. And my mind was in a space where I was kind of moving somewhere else. But then at some point that ends, and then I realize I'm still, suspended in the beginning of the 21st century. And I'm working every day. Got a car, the usual, So the thing that I feel like is going to be happening for me is I'm going to be getting in touch with that animalistic drive again, but it's going to be driving me into the type 1, trying to manifest that perfection. So I have a vision of a film I want to make. This is something that's been coming to me recently. We'll see if it plays out in time. But there's a film I want to make that's kind of describing a lot of the big things that are happening in the world right now. And things that are happening in my life too that are also happening in the world. And it's kind of an epic, huge world. Kind of like a George R. Martin or a J.R. Tolkien kind of thing, but my own kind of spin. And it incorporates a lot of the music I've listened to as influences, and the things the kind of games I was playing when I was a kid, and movies and religious stuff, spiritual stuff that I've read. It just gets all mixed together, and so I might be talking about it with time, but I'm gonna be trying to work on some projects to help manifest myself somehow, so I'm not stuck. I can't just be talking only. I need to kind of show more of what's really going on with me, what's happening inside, what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what's the sounds that are coming with it, what's the overall thing, I need to create that. So it's the big part of externalizing, which is I think it's the last function in the stack for the INFP. It's the extroverted thinking. It's the fourth one. I just need to start doing more of that, and I feel a strong pull to manifest this stuff, and it's like a big spiritual thing for me, so we'll see how it plays out. So I know this is kind of a long random video. Hopefully it was interesting to people. It kind of touched a lot of things. It was the 4, the 5, which is also the INFP, and the INTP, my spiritual journey a little bit, some projects I've got going on, a lot of stuff in there. It's at 50 minutes now, so I'm just going to stop it right here. I guess I'll see you guys next time.